Eyes of the Lake. The sky was a blanket of black velvet scattered with diamonds. I took a step forward, my boots crunching on the frosted ground. I could see my breath as I exhaled, a visible reminder of the cold that pricked at my skin, despite the layers of thermal clothing I wore. This was a different kind of cold, a biting chill that seeped into the marrow of my bones, an echo of a memory I had tried to forget. I reached the edge of the icy lake, the waters still and serene, a deceptive tranquility that belied the horror that lurked beneath. It was here, a decade ago, that I had lost them, my friends, my confidants, my allies in mischief. Emma with her fiery red hair and infectious laughter, Alex with his brilliant mind and gentle heart, and Lucas, the reckless daredevil with a wild streak. The night was silent, except for the occasional hoot of an owl or the rustle of the wind through the skeletal trees surrounding the lake. I stood, my gaze fixed on the distant cabin lights flickering like ghostly lanterns, the only signs of life in this desolate landscape. Gritting my teeth against the cold and the memories, I pushed my boat into the water. The old, worn-out canoe bobbed on the surface, its familiar weight comforting in my hands as I climbed in. With a single oar, I guided the boat towards the center of the lake, each stroke stirring the surface and creating ripples that danced under the pale moonlight. As I ventured further into the lake, a mournful howl echoed from the surrounding woods, making the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. I shivered, not from the cold, but from the haunting sound that brought back a flood of terrifying memories. The night we had been on this lake, laughing and sharing stories, oblivious of the nightmare that awaited us. I paddled to the middle of the lake and stopped. The cabin lights were now a distant shimmer. The eerie stillness of the lake seemed to swallow all sound, leaving only the drumming of my heart echoing in my ears. In the midst of the silence, a faint scraping noise came from beneath my boat. I stiffened, my breath hitching in my throat. My hands instinctively reached for the oar, but before I could react, a sudden jolt rocked the boat. The scraping noise continued, growing louder, more insistent, like claws on wood. The boat shuddered violently, knocking the oar from my grip. It disappeared into the water with a quiet splash. I was alone, stranded in the middle of the lake, the silhouette of the shoreline seeming miles away. A shadow moved under the water, a dark form that grazed the boat with a loud, grating sound. I held my breath, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. A moment later, the creature broke the surface, its grotesque form silhouetted against the moonlight. It had hundreds of eyes, an abomination of nature, the most terrifying sight I had ever seen. Among them, I could recognize the eyes of Emma, Alex, and Lucas, a chilling reminder of our fateful night. Fear gripped me, but it was quickly replaced by a burning rage. I reached for the wooden spear I had brought with me, my fingers closing around its familiar grip. I had come back for a reason, not to relive my nightmares, but to end them. As the creature advanced, the countless eyes staring at me, I stood up in the boat. My heart pounded in my chest, a drumbeat of defiance and determination. This was for Emma, for Alex, for Lucas, for Emma. I whispered into the wind, the words carried away by the frosty gust. I hefted the spear, its weight steady in my hands. The creature moved closer, its many eyes reflecting the sorrow and terror of countless souls. "For Alex!" I stated louder, my voice echoing across the silent expanse of the lake. The creature slowed, its grotesque form shimmering in the moonlight. Each of its eyes seemed to watch me, the gazes eerily human, filled with emotions they should not possess. "For Lucas!" I yelled, the words exploding from me, echoing my defiance, my challenge. The creature shuddered, the ripples spreading across the lake's surface like a physical manifestation of my determination. Suddenly, the creature lunged, water splashing, its multiple eyes glaring. The boat rocked violently, threatening to toss me into the frigid water. I held on, my knuckles white against the spear's wooden shaft. A primal roar escaped my lips, echoing across the lake. The creature reared, its mottled off-grey skin glistening in the moonlight. It was horrific and grotesque, a living nightmare risen from the depths. But as I looked into the eyes, I recognized Emma's green ones, Alex's brown, and Lucas's piercing blue. I felt a surge of resolve. With a mighty yell, I thrust the spear forward, aiming for the core of the creature. It connected with a sickening thud, the creature letting out a gut-wrenching wail that echoed across the lake. The boat rocked with the impact, but I held on, pushing the spear deeper. The creature flailed, its many eyes bulging, the human-like expressions distorting in pain and fear. It thrashed around, its massive body creating waves that rocked the boat violently. But I didn't let go. I held onto the spear, my lifeline, my vengeance. Finally, the creature's movements slowed, its wails softening to whimpers, then silence. It sank beneath the surface, the water closing over it, leaving nothing but ripples. My heart pounded in the silence that followed, the echo of the creature's death cry still ringing in my ears. I fell back into the boat, the spear still clutched in my hands. My breath came in ragged gasps as I lay there, looking up at the star-studded sky. My friends were avenged. The creature that had haunted my nightmares for so long was finally gone. As I paddled back to shore, under the watchful eyes of the stars, I felt an odd sense of peace settle over me. It was over. I had faced my fears and emerged victorious. The lake was silent once more, but this time the silence wasn't eerie or foreboding. It was peaceful, a quiet testament to my victory. The cabin lights twinkled in the distance, a beacon guiding me home. I knew then that the nightmares would end, replaced with the knowledge that my friends' souls were finally free, and maybe, just maybe, I could start to heal. Eyes of the Swamp. I once took an old, beaten-up kayak out into the heart of the swamp. The landscape was laced with moss-draped cypress trees, and the dark water mirrored the encroaching forest. A bracing gust of wind whipped at my face, the winter chills seeping through my jacket. Despite the biting cold, I welcomed the discomfort as a reminder of my humanity. The swamp's nocturnal inhabitants whistled and croaked from the shadowy depths of the forest, their alien calls growing faint as I ventured further into the heart of the swamp. The moon was nearly full, casting long, undulating shadows on the murky water disturbed by my paddle. As I paddled deeper, the distant glow of civilization faded into an obscure twinkle. The kayak bobbed with a rhythm of its own, gently rocking as I withdrew my paddle. In the distance, the swamp's water was eerily calm, reflecting a tapestry of stars. It had been ages since I'd been out here in this untouched wilderness. The absence of city lights and pollution revealed a celestial panorama that left me in awe. A nostalgic tune escaped my lips, one we used to sing during our childhood swamp explorations. As the melody filled the silence, memories flooded back. The faces of my friends, James, Andy, and Billy, our laughter echoing off the water as we splashed about, oblivious to the world. Time had a cruel way of slipping through fingers, and it had been far too long since we last spoke. I'd heard rumors that the swamp had been deserted for years. On my way in, I'd noticed faded, dilapidated signs warning of dangerous water conditions, but those warnings couldn't deter me. This swamp was my childhood playground. No bureaucrat who'd likely never left the confines of an office could dictate where I could or couldn't venture. The haunting melody continued to fill the air as I closed my eyes, reminiscing. Suddenly, a faint scratching sound came from beneath the kayak. My eyes snapped open, scanning the shadowy swamp. It was still. A beaver, perhaps, I thought, and resumed my song, leaning back into the kayak's unforgiving seat. The scratching came again, louder, more prolonged. It wasn't the work of a small creature, but something much larger, something that moved with purpose. I swallowed hard, glancing back towards the faint lights of civilization twinkling from afar. I was alone in the swamp, all potential companions deterred by the ominous warnings. With the third scrape, my heart pounded against my ribcage. It was coupled with a long, torturous, dragging sound, as if giant claws were running along the kayak's hull. Sweat trickled down my already frigid skin, a grim contrast to the cold around me. Ignoring the surge of fear, I reached for my paddle, only to bump the side of the kayak. An echoing thud shook the kayak in response. My breath hitched, every muscle in my body frozen in terror. I managed a feeble scream, plunging the paddle into the water. I managed a couple of desperate strokes before an unseen force ripped the paddle from my grip, disappearing into the murky depths. The kayak spun wildly, tossed around like a toy, a ghastly scraping noise accompanying each turn. I was a lone marionette, caught in a ghastly puppet show, clinging onto the kayak for dear life. The idea of being thrown into the pitch-black water at the mercy of whatever lurked beneath chilled me to the bone. As the kayak halted abruptly, I braced myself for the inevitable. The creature emerged silently, the moonlight revealing a grotesque, pulsating form. Its body was covered with a multitude of human-like eyes, each one swiveling to meet my gaze. My heart nearly stopped at the sight of one pair. They were the same vibrant green that James had, wide and terrified, just as they had been that fateful night. Decades ago, we had thought ourselves invincible, daring each other to explore the swamp in the dead of night. Our parents had been sound asleep, and we were itching for an adventure. Andy's paddle had been yanked from his grasp when we reached the swamp's heart. He had leaned over the edge to retrieve it, only to be dragged under. Panic had ensued, the kayak rocking violently as something massive stirred beneath us. Billy, in his fear, lost his balance and fell overboard. I clung to James, the both of us paralyzed as the creature surfaced. Its many eyes focused on us. A grotesque hand reached out, and in one swift motion, James was ripped away from me. All these years, I had wondered why I was the only one spared that night. As the years passed, a sense of duty filled me, a purpose that led me back to this horrifying place. My fingers found the object I had stashed under my seat. It was a spear, its blade gleaming menacingly in the moonlight, a tool honed with years of preparation and a desire for vengeance. I grasped it firmly, adrenaline coursing through my veins, making the weapon feel light as a feather. The creature's multitude of eyes watched me, mirroring the terrified gaze of countless lost souls. Among them, James's green eyes stared at me, pleading. I steeled myself, ready to face the nightmare that had haunted me for so long. I rose, the kayak rocking perilously under my weight, the spear held high above my head. A deafening silence fell over the swamp, the nocturnal creatures holding their breath in anticipation. As I locked eyes with the creature, I knew it was time to reclaim what was taken from us. With a battle cry ripping through the stillness, I lunged forward, spear first, ready to face the monster that had been the source of my nightmares. The final chapter of this long, gruesome tale was about to be written, and I was determined to be the one holding the pen. The Haunting on Whispering Lake. It was the summer of 2001 when I decided to visit the Whispering Lake, a place that had captivated me during my childhood. It had been nearly 20 years since I had last been there. The lake was nestled in the heart of the woods, a 2-hour drive from the nearest town. I had always been captivated by its mysterious beauty and the way the wind seemed to whisper through the trees surrounding it. The sun was setting as I arrived at the old cabin by the lake. The wooden structure, now weathered and worn, still stood strong despite the passage of time. I could feel a chill in the air as I unloaded my belongings and settled in for the night. It wasn't long before I found myself lying in bed, listening to the eerie sounds of the night. The gentle lapping of the water, the rustle of leaves, and the distant howls of nocturnal creatures seemed to weave together, creating a symphony of haunting melodies. Unable to sleep, I decided to venture out and explore the lake in the moonlight. I grabbed a flashlight and headed down to the water's edge. The surface of the lake shimmered under the silvery glow of the full moon, casting eerie shadows on the surrounding trees. As I walked along the shore, the soft whispers of the wind seemed to grow louder, almost as if they were trying to tell me something. Feeling a sudden urge to explore further, I found an old rowboat tied to a rickety dock. I climbed in, untied the rope, and pushed off into the lake. The oars creaked as I rowed, and the water rippled with each stroke, breaking the stillness of the night. As I ventured deeper into the lake, a dense fog began to form, blurring the line between water and sky. The whispers in the wind grew more distinct, and I could almost make out words in the haunting sounds. My heart raced as the feeling of being watched intensified, but I couldn't pinpoint the source of my unease. Suddenly, I heard a soft splash behind me. I whipped around, my flashlight beam cutting through the fog, but saw nothing. Chills ran down my spine as I resumed rowing, each stroke accompanied by the unsettling whispers. The fog grew thicker, and I realized I'd lost sight of the shore. My pulse quickened as I tried to retrace my path, but the whispers seemed to come from all directions, disorienting me. I felt my oar snag on something in the water, and as I tried to free it, a cold hand clamped down on my wrist. I screamed, shining my flashlight on the water, only to reveal a pale, gaunt face staring up at me with lifeless eyes. The whispers grew louder, forming a cacophony of tormented voices. Panicking, I yanked my arm free and frantically rowed towards the shore, my heart pounding in my chest. The fog began to dissipate as I neared the shore, and the whispers faded away. I stumbled out of the boat and raced back to the cabin, slamming the door behind me. As I caught my breath, I heard the whispers once more, now barely audible through the cabin walls. That night, I lay in bed, unable to shake the memory of the face in the water. I knew I couldn't stay at Whispering Lake any longer. The place that once held cherished memories of my childhood now felt cursed and haunted. In the morning, I packed my belongings and left, vowing never to return to the Whispering Lake. The chilling whispers of the wind and the horrifying face beneath the water still haunt my dreams, a constant reminder of the encounter I had that night. After leaving Whispering Lake, I felt a strange sense of loss, as though a part of my past had been irreversibly tainted. The face I had seen in the water stayed with me, a constant spectre in my mind, its dead eyes staring back at me in moments of quiet. I could still hear the whispers of the wind, a chilling echo that seemed to follow me even as I drove miles away from the lake. The memory of that night often invaded my dreams, transforming them into twisted nightmares. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, the ghastly face and the whispers etched into the darkness behind my eyelids. I could still feel the icy grip on my wrist, the sensation so real I'd often wake up clutching my arm. I tried to forget, to bury the memories deep, but they clawed their way back up, refusing to be silenced. I sought help, visited therapists, and even moved cities, but the Whispering Lake had left an indelible mark on me. Years passed, but the haunting memories didn't fade. The whispers grew louder, and the face in the water seemed to appear more frequently in my dreams. I realized I couldn't run away from it anymore. I had to confront the haunting spectre from my past. Fueled by a mix of fear and determination, I made the journey back to Whispering Lake. The once familiar sight of the cabin filled me with a sense of dread, but I steeled myself and walked towards the water's edge. The lake seemed to have changed, the waters darker, the wind colder. I could feel the whispers growing louder, as though they were waiting for my return. I took a deep breath, picked up an oar, and stepped into the same old rowboat. As I rowed into the heart of the lake, the fog started to descend, the whispers crescendoed, and the cold grip of fear threatened to paralyze me. But I pressed on until I reached the spot where I had seen the face years ago. The whispers grew silent, the wind stilled, and the water beneath me darkened. Then, in the icy, cold depths, I saw the face again. This time I did not scream or flee. Instead, I spoke. "I'm not afraid of you," I said, my voice echoing across the silent lake. The face stared back at me, its expression unchanged. But as I continued to stare it down, the fog began to lift, the water started to clear, and the face slowly disappeared. And for the first time in years, the whispers fell silent. I don't know what I expected to happen when I faced the haunting memory of my past, but when I rowed back to shore that night, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. The face in the water, the whispers of the lake, they no longer haunted my dreams. The whispering lake still holds a chilling memory, but it no longer rules me. I learned that the most terrifying specters are those we carry within us, and facing them is the only way to truly be free.